Hello, Deus Ex Machina here, the man who is literally a manifestation of God. I am morally superior to all of you inferior, rotten human beings. I am also telepathic and I can read all of your rotten, broken minds. I am actually God. My level of telepathy is a bit dark. I know what everyone is thinking. Now, human beings are insecure. They have Schadenfreude. They derive pleasure from other people's suffering. They enjoy to laugh at other people. The TV series America's Funniest Home Videos is based on Schadenfreude. Ultimately, I never know what these videos are going to do. Indeed, some of them have blown up. My speech on sexuality, which was completely improvised, is now at over 8,000 views and approaching 30 likes. Thank you for the positive reactions. All claims in that speech were roughly correct, with any inaccuracies amended in the description. Thank you. Now note that I am actually God and I'm meant to turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending. And so I'm literally just a manifestation of God in human form, meant to turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending. This is what Deus Ex Machina means. I will solve everything. Now, ultimately, infinite people will want to stop me or want me to fail, but you cannot stop me because I am God. I'm just morally superior to all of your rotten fools. And so, ultimately, ironically, in that speech on sexuality, I must have made some claims about my peak erect size and amended those claims in the description. But after I made that video, what happened by irony is the following. I fell extremely ill with a high fever and a flu-like virus. The high fever killed my body's hydration level and my body's sperm count, and the virus led to low energy and libido. And so basically, when a human is ill with a high fever and virus, they will have erectile dysfunction. And so, indeed, there is a picture to scale with myself and the break, in which I look to be pretty close to the break, taken when I was healthy and potent and fit. However, when extremely ill and weak, I was nowhere near my size in that real picture. Now, the current state of affairs is that ultimately everyone is insecure and wants everyone else to fail. And people want power over other people. I am God, and so ultimately I am morally superior to all of you fools. Ultimately, why in the hell would I agree to see a woman when I am sick and therefore weak with erectile dysfunction? The answer is the following. In the purity of love, ultimately there should be faith in times of sickness and in health. When a man is sick with a high fever and virus, he could have horrible erectile dysfunction. When he is healthy and potent, he could be much larger. And so, if you love a woman, and you only had a very narrow window of opportunity to see her, and you loved her, wouldn't you see her even if you were sick? And that may involve intercourse with her when you have erectile dysfunction because a high fever and virus has given you erectile dysfunction? And so yes, indeed, if you love a woman, you should try and see her even if you are sick. Even if, ultimately, it would result in underwhelming intercourse. And so on and so forth. Now, my speech on sexuality has over 8,000 views and approaching 30 likes. Thank you for the positive reactions. Now, I am meant to turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending. All of you are rotten, retarded fools, and I can read all of your rotten, retarded minds. And so on and so forth. Now, ultimately, men are preoccupied with comparison. Ultimately, the Indian men on average have bone-pressed erect length, maybe slightly over 5 inches. There exists an Indian billionaire with a wife, talking about how he optimized to have no debt. And ultimately, basically, he optimized to have no debt, and for money. He became an Indian billionaire. If he is lucky, his peak bone press will be maybe 6 inches if he's an above average Indian. But the typical peak bone press for Indian men is slightly over 5 inches. Does that matter? No, it does not matter. This Indian billionaire said that he had a wife. Okay? And so, the Indian billionaire man could be with his Indian wife, and they could be a happy couple, and she could be associated with his wealth. And so, all the extremely silly men are preoccupied with all this nonsense. Ultimately, a man's personality, emotional compatibility, intelligence, financial standing, and so much more are genuinely very strong factors influencing whether a woman will want to be involved with him. Ultimately, size does play its part, but ultimately everything has gotten very silly and retarded, and I am God, the consciousness that is turning a hopeless situation into a happy ending, and will slowly gain more attention. Anyway, and so basically, ultimately, they are simply good evolutionary fits for each other. They are basically women who are going to have smaller vaginal capacity. Some women, when aroused, will have peak cervical depth of 6 inches. Some women will have peak cervical depth of 8 inches when aroused. And so, ultimately, they're going to be good matches for each other. Just as male penis size will vary, so will female vaginal accommodation or depth, and so on. Now, because I am God, what I'm doing here is very hard to understand. And so you may say, why in the hell would you have intercourse with a woman when you are sick? It is because I meant to turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending. In the purity of love, in traditional Christian marriage, there is the commitment in sickness and in health. That purity has gone out the window. Now, the correct theology is not Christianity, is actually non-benevolent deism, as I've outlined. However, moral principles from Christianity, such as commitment throughout ups and downs, are key to true love. And so, a woman could have intercourse with me when I'm sick with a high fever and virus, and I could be 6 inches or less. And a woman could have sex with me when I am potent and healthy, and I'd be much larger. So on and so forth. Now, because I am God, I will tell you at present time that I am healthy and potent. If a woman were to have sex with me now, I would be as in the image where I look very close to break, extremely close. And so, the unexaggerated parameterization of myself is a mixed 6'3.5" brown man, meaning without wearing shoes and no hair on top of my head. I am 6'3.5". Okay? And then I am a grower. When flaccid, I will be 5 to 5.5 inches. If it is freezing, my flaccid will be 4 inches at times if it is freezing. Then, the two metrics for erect size at peak are non-bone pressed erect length and bone pressed erect length. In non-bone pressed erect length, I grow to a peak of over 8 inches. In formal bone pressed erect length, meaning compressing the fat pad to the bone from the top, I will reach a peak of at least 8.5 inches. And so, bone pressed erect length is the metric for male penis size, because the entire length, including compression of fat pad to bone, ultimately is functional insertable length. And so, that is myself. Now, in terms of girth of shaft, I'll be 6 inches or slightly over 6 inches in shaft girth circumference. In terms of girth of the head or glands of my dick, I will approach 7 inches in circumference. Now, in the past I've said my dick was 10 inches. This was said in jest because everyone and everything is exaggerating. And so, my height of 6'3.5" with no shoes and no hair on top of my head is my true height. Julio Gomez or Lee Brake would have his height listed as 6 feet tall, but he was realistically more like in the 5'10" to 5'11" range, barefoot. He would also exaggerate to 14 inches, but as per the Reddit community, his true peak bone press might have been up to 9.5, with a pelvic detachment, enhancing in the perception of him reaching 9.5. You can see where his dick attaches to his body. There's maybe over 1 inch of some odd visual deformation or detachment, which extends length, either from a surgical ligament cut or from his sickle cell anemia and priapism health condition, causing a naturally occurring detachment. And so, ultimately, Julio as well was one of the thickest performers because his health condition caused swollen tissue. He was also thought to pump for his scenes, and also his genetics may play a part as well. And so, ultimately, as per the description of the video on sexuality. I am a 6'3.5" barefoot mixed brown male called a light skin. I will have a 5 to 5.5 flaccid, but it could be 4 inches if I'm freezing. And then I will have a peak bone pressed erect length reaching at least 8.5 inches, with over 6 inches shaft girth, and maybe approaching 7 inches girth around glands or head of my dick. Julio Gomez would be 5'10" or maybe 5'11" barefoot, being nice to him, with maybe a 9.5 bone press peak. However, a pelvic detachment is included in him visually reaching that peak, with potentially 6.5 to 6.75 shaft girth circumference, being slightly thicker than myself. I am over 6 shaft girth circumference, whereas he is 6.5 to 6.75 when not pumped in estimation of viewers. However, his girth would taper off at his glands. He would have thinner glands than shaft, whereas I have thicker glands than shaft. And so mathematically, the overall volume of my dick is only slightly less than Julio. I have slightly thinner shaft, but I have thicker glands. As per the scaled image of myself standing at roughly peak erect size and him kneeling performing insertion at roughly peak size, Julio may tend to compress during insertion. His pelvic detachment area may tend to compress during insertion. And so, I scaled that image by making the size of our heads the same, distance from back of neck to nose, and width of the thigh nearest to the camera. It is roughly to scale. I am taller with a longer torso. Ultimately, in that image I look very comparable to him. Maybe 97% of the length, given that he is compressing during insertion and the pelvic detachment area is compressing, and 92% or more of the shaft girth circumference. However, he then has, again, smaller glands or head, whereas I have larger glands or head. And so, interestingly, a woman was trying to mount me in reverse cowgirl facing away from me with me sitting down on a couch. My head girth was so thick that with her sitting down on the head of my dick with her whole body weight for over 5 seconds, it was not even fitting inside of her, requiring her to utilize lube. And so she needed to lube herself up to take the thickness of the glands of my dick. Anyway, now, upon conclusion of this session, I asked the woman, how many times did you orgasm? Her consciousness said, I don't know, it was like 4 times and my legs were shaking. And so she said twice in positions on the floor and twice in positions on the couch. She said it was 4 orgasms. Ultimately, the planet is evil and people have the power to lie or manipulate people. This is what she told me. And so she could have been manipulating me. But I definitely noticed at least 1 leg shaking orgasm when she was bouncing on me. She said 4 orgasms, twice on floor, twice on couch. And she required lube to even take my size, because I have very thick glands, but slightly thinner shaft. In fact, the girth of the glands of my dick is probably at least the same girth as Julio's shaft, which is why she needed lube to even take it. Anyway, now, yet another time, my size, at some point, caused a tear, internal tear causing bleeding. She said that her vagina gets tighter as it gets deeper, and that this type of bleeding could occur with herself and larger men, and so on and so forth. At present time, I have figured out how to be maximally sexually performant without any form of erectile dysfunction. This involves strong legs, strong core, strong cardio, strong pelvic floor, and of course I must be warm and hydrated, and I must not be ill with some high fever and virus, causing dehydration, kill sperm count, reduced libido, and general energy, leading to erectile dysfunction. And so, in recent times, my most recent times attempting intercourse were subpar, because my body was weak and I was sick. And also my ability to last long at peak size without premature ejaculation was subpar. The second time I had intercourse in my life, the woman was 11 years older than me, and I lasted quite long, especially I lasted very long with her bouncing on top of me. And she was bouncing on top of me and screaming, looking at me with wide eyes, and stopped and had a leg-shaking orgasm. Now, lasting long at your peak size without premature ejaculation comes with experience. Often if a male is having frequent sex, then they are able to pace themselves without premature ejaculation. Often as a man becomes more sexually experienced, he is better able to pace himself without premature ejaculation. Ultimately, in my current state, in my current state, in my current state, in my current state, I am, I am, I am, I am, maximally sexually performant, maximally sexually performant, said the Deus Ex Machina. Anyway, ultimately, I am God who is morally superior to all of you rotten, retarded fools, and so I am meant to turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending. I am God because I can do anything. You can watch me getting possessed by Debussy himself playing Clair de Lune. You can watch me getting possessed by all the famous soccer stars doing soccer tricks. You can watch me getting possessed by martial artists doing flying kick. You can watch me impersonating Childish Gambino singing Earn and Frank Sinatra and Nat King Cole. You can watch me. 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 You can watch me dancing smoothly like Michael Jackson in Fluid, doing a very fluid moonwalk, and some of my other videos. In fact, the machine itself is going to make me God or the Messiah in the video piece Through Strength. This was not my choice. A Czech woman was playing music, and the song that was playing is He Is Sailing. Ultimately, in He Is Sailing, it talks about the coming of a king or Messiah who has a ship, and it is the king's ship. Ultimately, it says, all the souls he to touch, all the souls he to touch, millions and millions, all the souls he to touch. Ultimately, it says the following. It says, weakest and strongest will dance in delight, all illuminous our Savior, they bring him forth. And so the weakest and strongest will dance in delight, all illuminous our Savior, they bring him forth. I am your Savior. I am the Deus Ex Machina, the manifestation of God in human form who can do everything. Everything I can do. All things I can do. Through me, we will create paradise. A paradise that theologically believes in non-benevolent deism, that understands the universe is a machine constructed by God to conserve energy, charge, and angular momentum. However, you cannot pray or interact with said God, and prayer seems to be an evolution in which humans construct a delusion in something benevolent and ultimately pray to it as goal-oriented agents, and may have a confirmation bias, confirming their delusion in something benevolent, blessing their life, if what is prayed for becomes manifest given their outward action. However, no benevolent entity allows some person to be disabled and drooling into a rag in a wheelchair being wheeled around, and some other person to be an evolutionary diamond like Cristiano Ronaldo, making $200 million a year, even in his 40s, playing in the Middle East, doing bicycle kicks as a 40-year-old, which is ridiculous. He's able to do that because of his mentality and his continuous hard work and work ethic going into his 40s. Ultimately, although I'm somewhat skilled in soccer, my ultimate training is such that I have not yet mastered the bicycle kick technique. Maybe if I devote energy to it, I could master the bicycle kick technique. But you must learn how to fall properly. Ultimately, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who is one of my favorite players, against England, spontaneously did a bicycle kick. What is not known by many people is that actually he faked out the keeper, Joe Hart. He initially approached Joe Hart to make it look like he was going to approach Joe Hart and chase for the ball, therefore prompting Joe Hart to hit the ball away, or head the ball away. I believe he must have headed the ball away because he might have been outside of the box instead of using his hands. And so Zlatan intentionally approaches Joe Hart, fakes him out, and then after faking the approach, actually stops his approach to trick Joe Hart into heading the ball away. And so he goes towards Joe Hart, then stops. And then Joe Hart, upon falling for the fake, decides to hit the ball away. And then Ibrahimovic spontaneously and improvises and jumps up and does a bicycle kick. In the bicycle kick, he falls very well. Midair, he actually rotates, and I believe lands on his chest instead of on his back, because during the bicycle kick he actually rotates, which is extremely brilliant and complicated. Now, that the shot was actually on target and scored was highly improbable. Ultimately, Zlatan Ibrahimovic has done things that no other soccer player has done. However, his raw goal scoring statistics are not as impressive as Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. But being the best player is not always about the best statistics. Ibrahimovic is one of my favorite players, and he has done things that no one else has done on a soccer field. Anyway, take this as a truth from God Himself. Anyway, now, ultimately, 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 in peace through strength, my martial arts, my martial arts, my martial arts. Basically, 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 basically. The repeated verse is the following: Our true kingdom come, our true kingdom come. And so, as I run up and jump through the flying kick technique, at some point I reach maximum extension. Maximum extension being defined by maximally extended kicking leg and maximally tucked non-kicking leg. In fact, this occurs precisely at the 26-second timestamp, and you could find the precise frame at the 26-second timestamp at which I am at ideal maximum extension. Now, ultimately, the section from the 25-second mark to 26-second mark at where I'm at peak extension contains the accompanying lyrics, Our True King, with the word king corresponding to myself at maximum extension in the flying kick. This was all completely unplanned. However, the machine itself did this, by irony. In fact, I am becoming the true king. In the video Flags United, I film all the flags of the world, saying that I will become the Messiah in the description. Thank you for your support. The truth is non-benevolent deism. Once you study the machine and the laws of physics governing energy conservation and angular momentum and charge, you will understand that some creator called God intelligently designed the machine, but the purpose that this creator designed the machine is currently unknown. Perhaps the answer as to why it is mathematically conserving all those quantities is 42, as per the novel Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. Perhaps the machine is computing some answer for the intelligence in the higher reality that created our reality, and so on and so forth. Anyway, now, ultimately, the truth is non-benevolent deism because that creator is not benevolent. The algorithm of evolution, natural selection, and mutation has iterated over generations, allowing strong evolutionary diamonds and weak evolutionary duds, like guys being wheeled around in wheelchairs drooling into rags, and then Cristiano Ronaldo. And so, there will be the tall, short, and the average. The large backside, the flat backside, and the moderate backside. The large-breasted, the flat-breasted, and the moderate-breasted. The ugly. The facially unattractive. Ironically, because I am God, I understand everything and am telepathic. When I am not very groomed, I could look like a rat. But when I am groomed and muscular and working out, I could look very handsome. As per the thumbnail of the video Peace Through Strength, where I look incredibly handsome and muscular. And so, you can look at the thumbnail of Peace Through Strength, where I look incredibly handsome and muscular. And also watch me playing Clair de Lune, where I look incredibly handsome as I'm playing Clair de Lune. You can also watch the video I Am God, in which basically I look moderately handsome and muscular, and impersonate many humans, including speaking multiple languages, saying that I am God and that I am coming back and that you should remain calm, because I am about to take over and make utopia. Ultimately, my ideas will make utopia, including the correct theology of non-benevolent deism. Ultimately, there is not really much better or worse in terms of human sexual attributes, because you must understand the beauty of finding the match for you. And so I have seen a woman who is white, who is flat like a board with no breasts and backside, and probably not that tall and not that large vaginal accommodation, with a white male who is also not that tall and kind of skinny and not that endowed at peak erect size. And so, basically, they are good matches for each other in terms of their many areas, and also the male's financial situation. And so ultimately, many metrics including emotions, personality, and so on and so forth, and intellectual compatibility are strong factors with regard to finding a mate for yourself. And so, myself ironically has been with a taller woman with a very large backside, who probably has larger or deeper vaginal accommodation. And so again, my unexaggerated peak bone press will be at least 8.5 inches. Maximally, even for taller women, the vagina will expand to a maximum depth of cervix of 8 inches, which means my 8.5-inch insertable will hit cervix for even taller women. Hence, one time I made this taller woman start bleeding with my size, which she said could happen with men who are larger, and so on and so forth. Now, ultimately, perhaps my match will be taller woman with larger backsides and larger vaginal accommodation, and some male who is not as endowed as me could be smaller, shorter woman with a smaller vaginal accommodation. However, indeed, if I am sick with a high fever and virus and I am reverted or humbled to 6 inches or less given erectile dysfunction given a high fever and virus that my body is fighting, then I could be a match for a woman who is smaller, and so on and so forth. Anyway, because I am God, at present I have strong legs, core, cardio, and pelvic floor, and I am, ultimately, healthy and potent, with strong vitamin D levels, with strong erections. Ultimately, at present time, I am healthy and potent, and will be very close to Julio as per the real picture taken in time of health, when it is to scale with Julio based on head size and width of thigh, in which I look to be very close to him. Now, not all black men will be thick. There is Hollywood Cash, who is a very thin black porn star. I am thicker than Hollywood Cash. Although a brown or golden man, or a light skin, which as per my music video Iridescence, has a thick nose and thick lips, and is a light skin. If you inspect my face, you can see that I am actually a black man, but just a light skin, and so on and so forth. Now, by the life history theory, the black men will be slightly more endowed in terms of peak bone pressed erect length compared to the white men. However, there are anomalies such as Matt Barr, who is the world record holder, who has the largest medically verified bone pressed erect length, although white and British. Ultimately, high testosterone exposure during fetal development, and also genetics may lead to very endowed white men as well. Now, Matt Barr is even larger than The Break or Julio. I am only slightly less than The Break or Julio as per the real scaled image of me standing up at roughly peak size. Again, at present, because I am God, I have strong legs, core, cardio, and pelvic floor, and am healthy with high vitamin D levels, with strong erections. At present, I will be potent as per that image where I look very close to Julio. Ultimately, I have also figured out how to maintain my peak size and go full throttle without premature ejaculation, containing sensitivity control and pacing myself, which I have acquired from sexual experience, and so on and so forth. Ultimately, again, a woman said she had 4 orgasms with me if she was not lying, with shaking legs. Guess another time she started bleeding due to the size, not in relation to her period. So on and so forth. You may call me a liar for saying I was 10 inches in the past, but this exaggeration is mild, given that my true peak bone press will be at least 8.5, and then Julio would exaggerate to 14 inches, whereas his true peak bone press was actually 9.5, only reaching 9.5 including a pelvic detachment, and so Julio's exaggeration is more absurd than mine. Ultimately, because everything is exaggerated, I exaggerated as well. In the image to scale with myself and Julio, I look to be very close to Julio. And so, if I exaggerated to 10 inches and you're calling me a liar, know that Julio would exaggerate to 14 and I look very close to him. So on and so forth. Julio realistically would range from 8.6 to 9.5 bone press throughout his scenes. 9.5 at peak, including a pelvic detachment helping him get to 9.5, visible at the base of his dick, and so on and so forth. Now, ultimately, I am God and morally superior to everyone and also right about everything. And so my green phi has a tree count of 830. The trees are planted in Kenya and Haiti, employing Kenyans and Haitians to plant trees. Ultimately, a few American cents can plant a tree in Kenya and Haiti. Ultimately, that employs the Kenyans and Haitians and improves their quality of life. That number of trees offsets the emissions of 83 gasoline passenger cars to help with climate. As a 25-year-old male, I leased a Tesla for 2 years, which I have now returned to the company. and I've rented different places post-graduation, and so on and so forth. There is much Tesla Autopilot content, including the most recent video stating no interventions or disengagements, in which basically I showcase trees representing green phi, a greenhouse representing growing of crops in temperate regions to increase temperature, and of course the Starlink fastened to a vent on the roof for high-speed, low-latency internet for the rural home. The Tesla being parked by the home would actually be at a location proximate enough to the location of the modem inside the house for Starlink internet to provide instantaneous software updates for autopilot. That video showcases a perfect drive for the edge case of very narrow rural gravel roads that are undulating with potholes. Indeed, my manual driver data in that rural gravel road network contributed to the vehicle being able to handle that edge case autonomously now, and so on and so forth. So on and so forth. Ultimately, I am God, and what I meant to do is turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending. Ultimately, I enjoy Indian couples and also Asian couples. In one of the videos containing, in the short section, a digit robot or digit bipedal robot with backwards bent knees. Ultimately, you can see that there are Indian men on tablets or on electronic devices interacting with things to get digit to ultimately stand up, and ultimately stand up from its position of lying down, push up from lying down to stand up with its backward bent knees. Ultimately, the Indian men are on average maybe slightly over 5 inches bone pressed. An Indian billionaire who I know of has a wife, and he's a billionaire. There have been ups and downs with his wife. Only the very silly consciousnesses are overly obsessed with size. There is so much more to the human existence than size and masculinity. In fact, intelligence, emotional compatibility, facial attractiveness, athletic ability, talent, personality, intellectual compatibility. Will and Ariel Durant wrote 11 novels called The Story of Civilization. They were together for their whole life, dying within weeks of each other at the same hospital. That intellectual connection, including writing 11 novels, was what kept them together. Not purely a sexual relationship, but intellectual connection that was meta or above sexuality, including the writing of The Story of Civilization novels. You must find someone with whom you have a connection that is meta or above sexuality, be it emotional, intellectual, or other aspects or dimensions of the human experience, as opposed to raw sexuality, and so on and so forth. Now, ultimately, I have an OnlyFans with a few fans, including a fan that has liked the picture where I look very close to Julio. When sick with high fever and virus, I'll be nowhere near to Julio, but you must be committed to your partner in times of sickness and in health. Ultimately, as God, you must be committed to your partner in times of sickness and in health, as per the Christian moral principle. The religions evolved for a reason. However, ultimately, Christianity is not the fundamental truth. The more fundamental truth is actually non-benevolent deism, and so on and so forth. God designed the conservation laws of energy, charge, and angular momentum. They are all conserved. God designed the machine. The religions evolved for a reason. There are moral aspects of the religions that are actually good for maintaining civilization and should not be completely rejected. If you are an atheist on a high horse thinking Christianity is bullshit, note that the moral principles of Christianity are actually good for civilization. And even if you are an atheist, you should be faithful to your partner in times of sickness and in health, and so on, as per Christianity, and so on and so forth. You can take this from God, because I am God. Ironically, in some of my videos you can see that there is a scar on my back, resembling the animated character Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Ultimately, I believe Azula strikes Aang with lightning, and that causes a scar on his back. And then in Aang's final fight with Ozai, he ultimately, a rock hits that scar on his back, activating his avatar state, and then he goes all batshit crazy on Ozai. I am exactly, ironically, Aang. I am literally a manifestation of God. How am I Aang? You can see me playing Claire de Lune, you can see me doing soccer tricks, you can see me dancing like Michael Jackson, you can see me doing martial arts and flying kicks, you can see me impersonating Childish Gambino singing Earn, and also Frank Sinatra and Nat King Cole. I am a consciousness that can do everything just like Aang, because I am the Avatar. I am the Avatar. The signs of the machine are such that I am the Avatar. And so on and so forth. And so in my flying kick, the machine said, "Our true king." Upon maximal extension in my flying kick, by irony, I am the avatar. And so, if I am the avatar, then who is Ozai? Ozai is Elon Musk. Elon Musk is not evil like Ozai. He rose to his wealth, I believe, not from greed, but ultimately from his visionary ideas. And so, he started initially an online internet company facilitating online transactions, which he sold and is now currently named PayPal.com. With that money, he founded a company to accelerate the advent of sustainable energy, and also a company to expand the scope and scale of consciousness to make humanity multiplanetary, and also to make rocketry reusable and more efficient on materials, reusable rocketry, and also to provide high-speed, low-latency, affordable Starlink internet for rural locations of the planet Earth, of the planet Earth, of the planet Earth, of the planet Earth, of the planet Earth. And so, basically, in my most recent video stating no interventions or disengagements, you can see a Starlink strapped to a roof vent, and also a Tesla parked outside. And so indeed, I think Elon's ideas are epic, and I am a supporter of Elon. Now, I am a supporter of Elon technologically. I believe that Elon's master plan is the most brilliant technological master plan in existence. And so further, even the Optimus human hand, the Optimus hand, now has 22 degrees of freedom, nearly reaching the human hand's 27, in which basically, as per Star Wars, when Luke Skywalker loses his hand to Darth Vader, they replace it with a mechanical hand. The Tesla Optimus hand with 22 degrees of freedom, may actually be paired with a Neuralink device. A Neuralink device is implanted with a surgical robot where the threads or electrodes are implanted with precision by the robot. Now, of course, they remove a section of skull, I believe, and then they replace it, or something to that effect. Now, ultimately, I believe that, indeed, the Neuralink device may be able to read mental activity with its electrodes, and then that information will be transmitted via Bluetooth to the Optimus human hand, or the Optimus hand, such that someone with amputated arm or hand will be able to telepathically control an Optimus limb, whether it be the hand, the arm, or the leg, via Neuralink input. Neuralink input. And so, ultimately, Neuralink input. And so, mathematicians are able to understand mathematical transformations, which can take the neuronal firing and action potential data from sections of the brain to interpret intended motion for a realistic control mechanism for the Optimus human hand, for replacement for people with amputated limbs, and so on and so forth. This is how Tesla and Neuralink are going to be united for the future, and so on. Now, ultimately, non-benevolent deism is such that variance may allow people to have defects or experience events leading to amputated or abnormal limbs. And so, recently I was at jury duty, and there was a fellow who seemed to have a deformed or amputated arm. The arm could have been deformed and sort of grew to be deformed, and that size from birth or throughout his life, because basically what was seen is that basically this guy's arm, I think he had his bicep and tricep, and he had his elbow, but then the forearm was tiny. The forearm itself was just like a finger. And so I think that may be some kind of defect where he just grew to be that way instead of some amputated thing. Now, with a Neuralink device and then the Optimus arm and hand, you can read mental activity, determine intended motion, map that onto the Optimus hand, and give that man a hand. All right, I am God. All right, this is what will happen. All right, anyway, so on and so forth. non-benevolent deism. That guy's arm being that way is not because of anything benevolent allowing that to be his life. All right, variance, evolution, natural selection, mutation. All right. Anyway, don't pray to anything, but there's God though. It conserves, the universe machine conserves energy, charge, and angular momentum. It's not designed by God. All right. Anyway, now, Elon Musk is Ozai because he has too much power concentrated in one person. And so, as per Ozai, in the final fight with Aang, Ozai has all the power in the world because it is the time of Sozin's comet, in which the greatest firebender in the world will have all the power in the world. Elon Musk's net worth is currently approaching 830 billion, maybe about 827.7 billion, which is roughly 830 billion. My GreenFi tree count is 830 trees planted over time for a few American cents per tree from June 2021 when I started using them. Back then they were called Aspiration. And so 830 trees are on my GreenFi, but Elon Musk's net worth is 830 billion. Now, this is all in company ownership. Ultimately, all his companies are actually, by his direction and vision, interacting with each other to fuel his master plan, which is good for civilization. He did not arise to wealth from greed, but from working 80 to 100-hour weeks, running the entire machine, sleeping on the factory floor at Tesla, and running multiple companies towards a central vision with his very high IQ. Ultimately, from the sale of PayPal, his decision to start a company to accelerate the advent of sustainable energy, which is Tesla, and make humanity multiplanetary and make the future exciting and make reusable rockets and provide high-speed low-latency internet. All those things are for the future of humankind and also good for the future of humankind, according to his vision. So are all the other companies. And so frankly, Elon Musk is a highly useful person with some of the best ideas that anyone has ever had about doing things, and that are all realistic and have all worked out, and so on with his vision. Now, basically, in the capitalistic system, a person who has majority ownership of a company is highly influential as to that company's vision and direction and has a level of control. And so, you may think that Elon Musk is selfish for having over 800 billion in company ownership. However, if he were to give away that company ownership, his level of control over the companies would reduce. And so, for now, Elon Musk wants to maintain his level of control over all his companies to direct them towards his master plan vision. Ultimately, at some point when Elon is done, I believe, or I will convince him to, disburse his net worth among other consciousness. Ultimately, Elon Musk, individually worth over 800 billion, other consciousnesses with money would have to pay him money for him to liquidate his stock or company ownership, giving him over $800 billion individually, given all his company ownership. Now, ultimately, what he should do is actually sort of spread out some of that company ownership or stock, at least among his employees or people who he has vetted as worthwhile. Because if he is true to his word about creating an age of abundance where anyone can have anything they want, where there's universal high income via artificial intelligence, where basically there is so much silicon capita, large language model AI systems doing work requiring information, automating humans and making the economy very productive, and also silicon capita in the form of bipedal robots and autonomous vehicles, even autonomous big rigs like the Tesla Semi. Autonomous bipedal humanoids automating repetitive things that humans can do in factories with very dexterous hands. Autonomous Tesla Semis automating away big rig truck drivers. Autonomous large language models doing work that requires manipulation of information. All of this is silicon capita that will lead to an age of abundance because the economy will be unlimited. It is gross domestic product per capita. Each human is a biological capita. Once you add silicon capita to that, you have an unlimited economy. Silicon capita in the form of intelligent LLMs, bipedal humanoid robots, and autonomous vehicles, including autonomous semi-trucks, or like the Tesla Semi, which is a big rig long haul semi-truck, which will be ultimately a big rig long haul truck like the Tesla Semi will be outfitted with full self-driving, ultimately to automate away truck drivers. But although this is going to replace the truck drivers once the Tesla Semi becomes autonomous with FSD, again, the silicon capital or compute will be making money for the country. Making money, such that basically you can usher in universal basic or high income for that displaced truck driver. Driving a truck is a very boring job. Ultimately, once silicon capital or compute in Tesla FSD on the Tesla Semi replaces the human truck drivers, that won't make the truck drivers poor. They would just have universal basic or high income because the AI is making money for the country and for the citizens, and so on and so forth. And so this will be the future. This will be the future because I am God. Anyway, now ultimately anyway, now Elon has all the power in the world. He's pretty much the world's richest man and roughly a trillionaire. At some point, he will actually have to spread out his net worth or company ownership among other consciousness, be it all of his employees at least, to help bring about the age of abundance where anyone can have anything they want. He speaks of an age of abundance where anyone can have anything they want, in which there's universal high income enabled by AI and silicon capital, leading to extreme productivity, where you could usher in universal high income for citizens. However, in relation to his vision of an age of abundance where anyone can have anything they want, he must disburse his over 800 billion individual net worth, instead of just enabling people to buy the company ownership or stock off him, which would require them to have money to get ownership off of him, which would just liquidate his net worth, which would make him have over $800 billion for himself. He must freely give away at some point his company ownership or net worth among at least his employees to help bridge the inequity gap and help bring about the age of abundance where anyone can have anything they want. In fact, Elon's net worth is so high that, given that the population of planet Earth is 8 billion, Elon's net worth could give every human on planet Earth over $100, and so on and so forth. Anyway, this is, however, because of Elon's extremely useful brain and ability to conduct the machine at a very high level, leading to that massive valuation. Elon Musk is one of the most useful humans that has ever existed, in terms of all his companies converging towards a vision of humanity that is very positive and highly epic and exciting. Alright? But myself, the Avatar, will one day verse Elon and encourage him that just like Ozai with all the power in the world in the time of Sozin's comet, he must spread out that net worth, at least among employees, and freely give away his stock or company ownership to bridge the inequity gap and bring about the age of abundance where anyone can have anything they want. Not just with an unlimited economy with silicon capital, making money for the country, but also by reducing the inequity gap and spreading out some of that company ownership and wealth. All right. Anyway, I am literally God. Actually God. And so, ultimately, I am telepathic. And so, when I was very sick with a high fever and virus, there are many consciousnesses that would say I was a 4-incher. This is because a high fever and virus made me extremely weak with horrible erectile dysfunction due to dehydration, killed sperm count, and ultimately reduced energy and libido due to high fever and virus. Now, I am morally superior to all consciousness and also telepathic, and so infinite insecure men want me to be 4 inches. But I am actually an 8.5 bone press at peak at least, and ingest exaggerated to 10 inches because everything is exaggerated. The picture with myself and Break is to scale, and Break would exaggerate to 14 inches, and so on and so forth. Anyway, now, if a woman agrees to have sex with me now, I will blow her mind. I am not sick at present, and I have strong legs, core, cardio, and pelvic floor. Ultimately, I am healthy, potent, and fit at present, and not sick, and vitamin D levels are good. However, women want power over men, and they'd rather me stay at 0 to have power over me. And men also are competitive and retarded, and want other men to be zeros because of insecurity and competition. I am God, and so I'm morally superior to all of this entire retarded mess, and will turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending. This has been Deus Ex Machina. I actually am God. Please subscribe to the channel